All right, Steve Robertson's about to tell us if Dylan Gabriel is going to Starkville and who the next defensive coordinator is at Mississippi State. You're listening to the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN. Driven by your next Nissan Pathfinder, all new body style, baby, and it is good looking. And Nissan Rogue, the crossover from Canon Nissan in Jackson. This is ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Steve Robertson, 247 Sports, Gene's Page, the Boneyard Podcast. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Steve, who's the next defensive coordinator at Mississippi State?
Well, I wish I could tell you with some confidence. We've worked the phones, and it's as quiet as anything that I've seen. I mean, of course, when the coaching search is going on, there was plenty of people willing to talk. To be honest with you, I think there are some people in the agent world that's kind of gotten Steve Robertson fatigue and probably tired of hearing from me. But, we've heard Jeff Collins mentioned. We've heard Randy Shannon mentioned. There's been a lot of names that have been mentioned, but not anything that I feel really confident about at this point that I could say, hey, this is going to be the guy. We do expect to get some names later today. I was told on Friday there should be an announcement today, but I'm told that might actually go into Tuesday. And that's just like pushing paper, right? I mean, you got to get things pushed through and get those contracts approved. But at this point, we're still working the story, and I can't give you any conclusions just yet.
Jeff Collins went dark on me. He was taking my phone calls and texts and was coming on the show. And now I'm just messing with him when I send text to him. You out there? Hello? So,
I've been in touch with Jeff too, and it's interesting. A lot of people have his name. His name actually circulated last week in Atlanta at the SEC championship game that he may be, a candidate. I reached out to Jeff, and he was pretty coy about it. And you can't read anything into that. You can drive yourself crazy with all that, but I wouldn't totally rule it out. But I can't say that I'm expecting it.
I'm not either. He told me he wanted to, he wanted a top 10 job. I don't blame him with his numbers. As a defensive coordinator at all, and with some of the things that could still shake out, as you know, with top 10 programs. I also wonder, Steve, who can handle those 81 snaps per game that Levy's going to put? That's a lot of pressure on your DC, and most DCs can't handle that high snap count, and I think that's something to run the numbers on. Who can and who can't handle that,
Yeah, that's a big part of it too. And, we heard about that a lot with the air raid, but then actually,
but Mike took the air out of the, you're exactly right, Steve. And it was funny. Fans just go, oh, he went up tempo. I mean, Mike shortened the game and drained the clock because he understood the talent level on the roster and he was playing uphill, right?
Yeah, and more times than not, they won time of possession, which has kind of become a meaningless stat in many respects. But it wasn't like he was just leaving the defense out there to wilt. You had some games like, against LSU, where you've got the lead in the fourth quarter and the defense gets gassed out. And that was not State's play calling. That was LSU's defensive prowess kind of just shutting that Bulldog offense down. And so, and in other words, the defense is on the field a lot just because the offense couldn't move the football. But it wasn't like that Mike just going out there just chunking up Hail Marys and hoping for the best,
All right, so defensive coordinator, you think today or tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'm hoping today so we can remove it as a topic of conversation. It's amazing how the calendar works. It's been a week, since Jeff Levy was introduced as head coach, and people are like, oh, my gosh, why are we having such trouble? I was told on Friday that some of the people that were willing to talk and that we wanted to talk to were still playing, and so they were hopeful to have a decision, yesterday or today, and so it's a professional courtesy. You don't want that stuff leaking out while one of your prime candidates is coaching a ball game. And so, but yeah, people are freaking out. I got people, I'm beginning to question the hire because we hadn't hired a DC. I mean, try a DCAT. Just relax a little bit. It's been a week, and the portal just opened today. Nobody that entered the portal today is going to be like, oh, Mississippi State doesn't have a DC. I think I'll go to Ole Miss. It just doesn't happen that way. Everybody just needs to take a deep breath.
Who would you like it to be?
I'd like it to be Bo Bounds because I think you said a lot of things on the radio over the years that that make a lot of sense to me. And I think that I know that we blitz from the locker room, like as soon as we get out there. I think it would be a Joe Lee Dunn style type deal.
No doubt.
And we use some NIL money to to get like some Ashley Cooper types out there, and we go to work. But no, I don't really have a preference. I mean, I'm going to cover the team either way. But
sure,
I think
me
the
too.
main thing you got to have somebody. I think one of the things you have to do when you begin to play this thing out, right? A lot of people are going to want to keep Levy's offense on the sideline. I think you've got to have a guy, number one, that stops the run first. I think when you think about the cohesive use of this team, you've got to be able to get the ball back and not let people shorten the game on you.
I agree, and you got to have somebody who is willing to substitute a lot to handle Levy's snap count. I know that sounds basic and elementary, but not all DCs or OC, are willing to do that. And I think you've got to rotate players. I know a lot of that is dictated by depth and talent, but you got to do it. And you especially have to do it, Steve, on non-conference games where you're winning. You got to rest your dudes for the next SEC game. All right. Dillon Gabriel. What do you think how long do you think the quarterback sweepstakes could last in Starkville? Like you said, this is day one of the portal.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's going to go. I know there's another transfer portal quarterback that is in discussions about taking an official visit to Mississippi State this weekend, not named Dillon Gabriel. It's not some big surprise that Gabriel has gone in. We were told when Levy was emerging as one of the priority candidates that there would be some players that would follow him because they like his style of offense. They believe in Jeff as a coach. And so, could Gabriel be one of those? He certainly could be. It's certainly wide open right there. And you're talking to some of the recruits over the weekend that had in-home visits with Jeff Levy. They've said he's told them, we're going to get a big-time quarterback right out of the gate. He's, conveying the expectation of recruits. And he told San Francisco McGee, who recently decommitted from Ole Miss, we got to go get the quarterback first. And we're going to go get a guy that can get you guys a football. And so I think there may be a situation where Jeff Levy maybe knows what Dillon Gabriel's thinking. I think a lot of people are surprised today that he's actually in the portal. I think anybody that's followed this whole thing with Jeff is probably not surprised.
Right. Okay.
Penn State finished, right? I mean, because like people are talking about SC and talking about Oregon. I'm here. It's going to be State or Oregon in the early going. And of course, you don't know what his options are going to be, but Oregon, obviously, with a big NIL package up there, and State's going to be able to compete in some respects. But anybody that thinks the State can outbid Oregon for a player is probably kidding themselves. But, State's very much in the mix here.
Well, and they've raised several $1 million for football. They're finally in the game, as you know. So they've had some 7-figure gifts, 6-figure gifts in the Bulldog Initiative. Agree that they can compete. Now, as you know, Steve, Phil Knight's worth around $45 billion. So, Phil can do what he wants. Let me ask you this. Do you have time? This is a short segment. Do you have 5 minutes or so on the other side of the segment to get a little bit more into the portal, the numbers, and the high school numbers and how this could look over the next few weeks with Jeff Levy?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, the Boneyard Podcast. He believes that a defensive coordinator, he's been all over this thing, that a defensive coordinator announcement will come today or tomorrow. I agree with Steve. It hadn't even been a week. People need to settle down a little bit. And Mississippi State's going to be in the mix. They can go 7 figures on a QB. Will it be Dillon Gabriel? Who knows? There's several more good options outside of Dillon Gabriel. And as Steve said, it's early. It's the first day of Portal Mania. Not that it really ever ends. It's really 365. So the Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Bulldog Burger in Ridgeland, Bulldog Burger in Starkville, and Bulldog Burger in Tupelo. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, the Boneyard Podcast. We'll do about 5, maybe 10 more minutes with Steve Robertson on the other side as far as portal and high school recruiting. We are the Out of Bounds Show. We're driven by your next Nissan Pathfinder at Cannon Nissan in Jackson. for Jackson.
For other G8.
Fine dining is named the great.
Welcome in. Hit. Presented by RP. Steve Robertson, kind enough to hang out with us for a few more minutes. GenesPage.com, the Boneyard Podcast. Steve, we received a couple of texts after you dropped Francisco McGee earlier, and you mentioned him. By the way, this is the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Steve joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance Guest Line. Steve was high on this guy before Ole Miss and/or Mississippi State offered. In fact, Steve, we had you on, was it last May or April, and he still had not received some Power 5 offers, and you had an opportunity to see him and you loved him. Isn't that right? Timeline, Russ?
Absolutely. And a lot of it, too, is just being from South Mississippi, right? I mean, Macomb is just 40 minutes from my hometown of Columbia, so I hear about these players. I've been doing this for so long. I mean, people say, hey, this is a kid you need to watch. And I wondered about his size, you know what I mean? I was like, I want to see this kid in person. Then I do, and he was much bigger and more physically advanced than I expect him to be. I mean, there's only so much you can tell in pads. But then we get him in camp, and I was like, I got to take this kid. And then he takes unofficial visits to Ole Miss and commits up there and has now reopened his recruitment. And I fully expect him to be a Mississippi State Bulldog when it's all said and done. But, there are some guys down in South Mississippi. I think a lot of it, too, and we talked about this before, like kids from the Delta and kids from, rural areas of Mississippi. They grow up with such a sense of work ethic, and I think you can build a team around those guys. Are they going to flash in the rankings more times than not? No. But I think you can get those guys. It's kind of what Mullen did, right? I mean, it's like you fill out the bottom half of your class with these kids that kind of grew up needing football, and they carry you to some big things. And I think he fits that description. I think he is a very talented player that maybe is a little bit undervalued as a recruit, but the kid can really play.
Yeah, you've liked him for a long time, and even gave Ole Miss credit for going and getting him. And now he's reopened it. Did Bumpus stay on him or somebody else? How did that work, Steve?
Yeah, Bumpus has stayed on him the whole way. And I had an interview with San Francisco yesterday. It's one thing he said that impressed him is even after he committed to Ole Miss, Bumpus never gave up on him, and that he stayed in contact with him. And him and Jeff Lebby were in the home, Saturday. And one of the first in-home visits that Jeff Lebby makes as the head coach at Mississippi State to San Francisco McGee. And if that doesn't say where he is as a priority, I don't know really what does. You don't bring a head coach down there and do your in-home visit this early unless you're serious about somebody.
And Stonka Burnside, do you think Mississippi State's back in it, or Ole Miss leads by, miles and miles?
If I had to call it today, I'd call Mississippi State. And I think Ole Miss is still in it. I don't think Ole Miss has ever had a significant lead in this deal, but I think in the end he's going to sign with one of the two schools in December. I do expect it to be Mississippi State, but he'll announce his decision January 3rd at the Under Armour game. And here's what's going to happen, Bo, is your text line and my message board's going to light up when he doesn't sign with somebody in December officially. And people are like, what's going on? Something's got to be going wrong here. Ole Miss is trying to do something shady. That's not going to be the case. He's going to sign in December, and then they'll just hold the announcement, similar to what Mississippi State did with Deontay Anderson a couple of years ago. He was part of that All-American virtual game where they just kind of announced their decisions. But he had signed with Mississippi State, and then after he announces the national game, then State officials issues the press release. But I expect it to be Mississippi State. I think at this point, locally, I think it'd be a surprise. But you still got 3 weeks to get this thing figured out. A lot can change.
We're talking recruiting with Steve Robertson, genespage.com. What are your expectations? Again, he's only been there a week. So Ole Miss, among others, have an advantage of recruiting a lot longer and some of the staff's intact. What are your expectations for visitors the 9th, 10th, and 11th, Steve?
Oh, I think it's going to be big. I think you're going to have a lot of the commitments in this weekend. Go ahead and get that visit done. And also you're going to have some priority targets in that'll be around your commitments, and so they'll in turn kind of recruit together. You got to think next weekend's Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game, right? I mean, so that's a factor in these visits as well. So you get these guys in, and then they get to the All-Star game, and then hopefully they don't take a visit that last weekend. But that's a big part of this. And then you look at some of these kids at State's recruiting from East Mississippi. I mean, they upset Hutch over the weekend. They're going to play in a national championship game on the 13th. So you're not going to have your kids out taking visits when you're getting ready to play a game that next Wednesday or whatever. So those kids from East Mississippi may only have 1 weekend to take a visit. They may work in some midweeks, but, State's got 2 commitments in that group. And then recently offered Marcus Ross. He's a product of Jeff Davis High School. It's leading that team in tackles this year, and State certainly needs some linebackers. But it's crazy to think about. We just get through all this coaching stuff, search, and we're not totally done with that. And so we shift the recruiting. You go right into all these official visits, and the next thing you know, the December signing period is here, and then we can take a break for a little bit.
Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show and the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. People are going nuts on the text line. What do you think the numbers will look like as far as high school signees and portal transfers?
Yeah, I think 50% plus in this class, when it all shakes loose, will be either junior college or transfer prospects, because State has got to have some experience. If you look, you lose 5 of your top 7 offensive linemen, right? I mean, maybe you get LaSoya back out of the portal, but you're losing a ton up front on offense and defense in the trenches. And so you can't just go sign a high school guy and expect to get better there next year. I mean, State's got a brutal schedule next year. And so you're going to have some guys up front. So, yeah, I think you're going to see some veteran guys on both sides of the line of scrimmage, especially O-line, D-line. But, yeah, I don't think you're going to add a ton of high school kids down the stretch. I think Samir Camacho, a kid out of Houston, Texas, has got a relationship with John Cooper, will be in this class. And, of course, there's some in-state guys. Obviously, you would make room if Conan Daniels wanted to come. I know State's taking another swing at him. State's taking their swing at William Eccles, and so I think there'll be a lot of drama. I think these next 3 weeks between the State-Ole Miss thing, people battling. I think Ole Miss is playing defense here more so than State. But, as we've seen, Lane Kiffin likes to dig out that ugly Christmas sweater that says Merry Flipmas on it, and so it's going to be a very entertaining 3 weeks, I think, for both teams, but also with the portal opening today, you're going to have some new names pop up, and those guys don't sign in December. That lingers on into January enrollment. But the reality of it is there is no off season for college football anymore.
You would not be surprised if they go up to $2 million for the quarterback, right?
No, I wouldn't be surprised, and I think you've got to give Jeff Lebby the best chance to compete year one. I don't think you can't play this cheap. You got to go let him get the guy that he wants, and if that costs you a lot of money, then that's what it costs you. But you got to go get things done, and you can't. I think it sets a bad precedent, right? Like if Levy's like, "Hey, we can get this guy and this guy," and you're like, "Well, we're going to give about half of that," So then you got to go make him make the best of a bad situation, give him the best chance to succeed, enable him to go get the quarterback he needs to move this team forward immediately.
Okay. Yeah, because you don't want him going into year 2. They need him to be competitive and have a guy that can be a playmaker next year just because he's young and inexperienced and so on. All right. As far as – so you're expecting 20-ish high school and around 25 portal. Is that right?
I don't know that I would go that high. I don't think you're going to have quite as many high school guys. Well, they got 16 commitments now, and 3 of those are junior college guys. But I think it's going to be a 30-plus guy class, and the majority of those guys are going to be either 2-year guys or transfer guys. I see State being very active in the portal, and you simply have to be based on the attrition. You had an older team this year. We talked about that all in the offseason, but most veteran roster in the Southeastern Conference, and then you don't have the season you should have. Well, guess what? All those guys are leaving, So it's not like you can say, well, we took our lumps this year and they'll be better for it next year. The guys you depended on are gone. And so you've got to go replace those guys with some older veterans that can come in and make a difference in year one.
All right. We'll leave it there. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports, and the Boneyard Podcast. Did I miss anything? People mentioned basketball, but we hit some of that earlier. I know you were disappointed by yesterday's game, Steve.
Terrible. One of the worst losses in Mississippi State men's basketball history, but I'm still very much a Jan Sanic, right? I still believe in Jan Sanity. We had an off night against Georgia Tech, and that was just terrible yesterday. I mean, you closed the game on a back end of a 12-0 run. I mean, it just can't happen. But now Chris will get it worked out, and Tolu's coming back too, so it's not a situation where this season's over. But that was an inexplicable loss yesterday.
We'll leave it there. Steve Robertson on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Thanks, Steve.
See ya.
Okay, so a little bit of an update there as far as you got to go all in on the quarterback. And the numbers are going to be insane. But you got to give Lebby an opportunity to very I don't know what the wins and losses will look like, but very competitive in year one because you're dealing with a guy who's never been a head coach, and he is inexperienced, and a playmaker masks all these deficiencies that we're talking about, right? And gives you a shot. Plus, your non-conference game is at Arizona State. And you pulled Texas at Texas, not at home. So while I know all the teams have tougher schedules, well, especially in the East, have tougher schedules because they've been living the dream. The East is much, much weaker, not near as powerful, strong, good recruiters, good players, athletes, powerhouses as the West. I don't think the SEC media has really framed up the gap between the West and the East for years. I don't think they have. We know about it because we have teams here in the state that have to play uphill in the West. And then so does Arkansas. KJ Jefferson? Somebody said, Bo, did you forget about KJ Jefferson? We talked about him last week.
Does he stay with Petrino? Because we talked to the Arkansas insider, and he said, that
you would have to believe they want to recruit him.
Yeah,
back,
no doubt.
All that PT under his belt, all those reps, all those snaps, all those experiences in stadiums, both at home but on the road. He's seen it all, and he was hurt this year. And I think people are like, he's not that good. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Are you kidding me? He lost his offensive coordinator, got hurt, didn't have anything around him. Rocket Sanders was hobbling around the whole year.
No O-line?
I just KJ Jefferson can play and play well.
But who's Auburn going to go get? Because that's
Well, they're going to get in the mix too.
Yeah.
And they're going to pay. So the bidding wars will be epic for quarterbacks. No question. I was surprised Hugh Freeze didn't go. I mean, Peyton Thorne. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, he's a nice player, and he played his tail off, and I thought Hugh Freeze messed it up for a while with the two guys, but they're going to be all in. Who else?
South Carolina's got to go get a new quarterback.
Oh, Spencer Rattler. Man, he's going to be a nice third-round pick and probably have a chance to do some good things in the NFL. Had terrible coaching around him. They did land the wide receiver. I can't remember his name this past year, but he's a good player, really good player. If you'd have put him with an offensive coach, there's no telling. Does Georgia stand pat with Carson back?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But does Bama? I'm not sure about that.
I mean, you've seen how he can progress in one season. Would you not want to see him in another?
I mean, I think Milroe's a good football player. Hell, they could win it. But does Bama stand pat? What's LSU going to do?
I was just thinking, do they stay with Nussmeier?
I don't know.
I mean, because obviously something's changing on defense. We know that's going to happen. But in the quarterback position...
Is Elko sold on Wigman?
Yeah. I mean, Max Johnson's now at North Carolina.
Tennessee's going to be in the portal. Unless they've got I don't know if they've got a hot shot behind Milton. But they're not going to do that deal again.
Does Florida stay with Mertz?
No. I don't...
So we could have...
Well, hang on. I don't even know what classification he is. But if he does have another year, I think they got to upgrade, man. Napier's, is on the line. The Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, is brought to you by the delicious premium tequila, Patron Reposado, and Patron Añejo at Briarwood Wine and Spirits, 4949 Old Canton Road. What do you got?
Mertz is a junior.
Okay.
So he does have more time.
Okay.
Auburn's definitely getting a quarterback, right?
Florida State will be in the mix unless they've got a hot shot they love. Ohio State's, there's a lot of them, man. There are going to be a boatload of teams looking for dudes everywhere. What happens at Texas with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning? It doesn't sound like that would be anything the Mannings would do, but I lean towards them just saying we're going to stay here and compete.
Yeah.
And we feel like Arch can either beat him out or he'll wait one more year. That's a long time. Now, Eli waited forever. He did not start until his redshirt sophomore year. He played behind Romero Miller, as y'all remember, for 2 years. Peyton was going to sit, but two guys got knocked out in front of him. I was at Davis Wade Stadium that day. Actually, it wasn't Davis Wade at that point. It was just Scott Field. Dude gets knocked out. Peyton Manning comes in, never relinquishes the job as a true freshman. Different deal, but different era. I mean, just totally, it's even with Eli, it's just totally different times.
Oklahoma's going to be looking for one now, too.
Oklahoma will be looking. There's a bunch of teams, man.
So many in the SEC,
Washington,
too.
Oregon, Southern Cal. We could keep going and going. What's Penn State going to do? They couldn't score this year. Fired their OC. James Franklin, other than Moorhead's 2 years, but really 1 year, they have really disappointed people as far as what they've done on offense. Is that James Franklin strangling his OC and meddling too much? And he lets his DCs do the work? I know the Big Ten's not as prolific or explosive as we are down here as far as athletes on the offensive side of the football. But hadn't Franklin been like they don't beat really good teams. You know, I mean, they'll beat Indiana and they'll beat Rutgers and they'll beat Maryland and they'll beat Michigan State. But,
yeah. Iowa.
And he still has good numbers, but that's a tough thing. You know, he went through a rough stretch and they still gave him. This is the difference between the Big Ten and SEC. He was like 500 in Big Ten play or something for over a year and a half. It was a bad stretch, and they gave him a $50 million deal. I mean, he's got a fat new contract that he got like a year and a half, 2 years ago. So he ain't worried about it. He's already made tens of millions, but they slapped a $50 million deal on him not long ago at Penn State. So is he a good coach? Yeah, but do they want more? Can they ever get past Ohio State and Michigan? And now with Southern, I don't know. Lincoln Riley, to me, doesn't seem to be trending the right way with Southern Cal, and Chip Kelly doesn't care about recruiting. They're weird out there, man. Those two teams should be balling out, and yet it's a combination of commitment and I think, what did we talk about Lincoln being a trust fund baby? Bob Stoops handed him the keys to a brand new Maserati, and people went nuts like Lincoln. I mean, I had people on our text line like Lincoln Riley was the next Dabo. Dabo actually built Clemson. You know, what DeBoer's doing at Washington is impressive. What Norvell has done at Florida State after Jimbo burned it down and Willie Taggart is those kind of models impress me. What Lane Kiffin's doing at Ole Miss, that impresses me. Dan Mullen at Mississippi State. Those are guys that go in and build and maintain. Lincoln Riley walked in. It's like if your dad handed you a $500 million business. Hey, Jason, here are the keys. Our profit every year, we're hitting between 90 and 130 million net, and things are really good. And it'll take you you could do it, but it'll take you several years to run this thing into the ground. Okay? Lincoln Riley walked in to here are the keys to a brand new Lamborghini. And here's a beautiful home and everything else. So I don't know what's going to go on there either. All right, let's switch gears. Let's have some fun here. We went hardcore sports today. I think too much, honestly.
Dial it back.
I may be done for the week on hardcore sports. Where's the list you gave me? It's National Cabernet Franc Day.
It is.
Reminds me of Dakota Shy. I was also in browsing through Briarwood Wine and Spirits last week, and I came across an oldie but goodie. Ridge Zinfandel. And it's a blend of Zen, Petite Syrah, and Syrah.
Ooh.
And let me just tell you something. It's lick your fingers delicious.
What?
I'm telling you.
I've never had this.
Well, you'd love it. That's not the only thing they do. Everything they put out is excellent. But I love some Cabernet Franc. And that Dakota Shy that we ended up getting several bottles. And I still have 1 or 2 left. So that may have to be opened up over Christmas. It is, I mean, you go with the rack of lamb.
Ooh.
And you got to go something, a big
Big flavor.
Ribeye or a big ribeye. If you've got any Wagyu, anything like that, it's maybe a stuffed pork chop and some Cabernet Franc.
Chill out. You're making me hungry.
Yeah.
It's not even 10.
That stuffed pork chop at Commodore Bob's in Starkville with the Cabernet Franc, unbelievable. I bet you poured some of that at local.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
It's a great grape.
I did have one time somebody, the manager handed me the wrong bottle, and I showed it to I didn't check. I was, in a rush, showed it to the table. They were like, yeah, that's it. Opened it, poured it, everything, and then come back, and they're like, this is the Cab Franc, not the Cabernet. But they taste it. They were like, it's okay. And I go back, and it's a $150 bottle.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when you're kind of like, oh, blank.
Yeah, exactly. And so then talked to the manager. She was like, well, I thought that you knew what it was. And I said, well, you're the one, that whole thing back and forth.
Yeah, and the manager wins on that debate.
Yeah, but I also won because they said, well, we can't serve this to anyone else if you just want to have the rest of the bottle. I was like, okay, perfect. Got a $150 bottle of wine, or, in a restaurant, $150 bottle of wine.
Did you really?
Just got to finish it, yeah.
Did you pair it with some chicken pot pie?
No, not at all. Actually, they had some leftover short ribs in the kitchen.
I love short ribs.
They let me.
Don't even do that.
That's why wherever you work, become friends with everyone,
bro.
Just in case, because the kitchen. If you're friends with the kitchen, they hook you up.
Yeah, they do.
That's the way to do it.
They do. Oh my gosh, high level quality short ribs is a different level. Speaking of recruiting, we talked a lot about that today. It's powered by Kinetic Staffing, right? Executive recruiting. You want to go to Kinetic Staffing, technology firm, manufacturing CEO, CPA, law firm, powered by Kinetic Staffing, KINETIC, kineticstaffing.com. Executive recruiting and long-term staffing is brought to you by Alan Lang and kineticstaffing.com. Kineticstaffing.com. Executive recruiting. And Let's Go Lunch today, Jason, is brought to you by the Mushroom and Swiss Burger at Bulldog Burger, Lake Harbor in Ridgeland. Have a great day. We'll be back tomorrow. Tom Luganbill will join us at 7:30. Mike Detillier at 8:30. Have a good Monday. See ya.